Hey everyone, I'm Kyle Conway, professional animator and amateur game developer. I'm also the solo developer of my first commercial game, Heist. Now, to start out, I want to say some comments about this DevLog series so far. The first being of which, that as I watch more and more of other developers' devlogs, I realize that the formula for successful devlog series is comedy. I feel like a lot of the more successful developers on YouTube are pretty funny. And I like to think, I'm a pretty funny guy. I'm pretty funny. I've been known to cause a chuckle or two. But watching the first episode of this devlog series, I realized that I'm pretty awkward. And we can chalk that up to being a first-time game developer. And I don't really know how to present the information that I'm giving in a way that people would want to hear it. So put it down in the comments below, what kind of a devlog do you want to see? Do you want me to be funny? Or do you want me to be serious and technical? Anyways, let's get to the video. As we all know, with the virus, everyone who can work from home is working from home, myself included. By the way, thank you to all the essential employees and first-line responders. But as I said, I am working from home, so my work computer has taken the spot on my desk. And the computer that I have used for development for part 1 is now in the guest room. Luckily, my fiance has allowed me to use her computer, which also happens to be right next to my work computer. But it's a start, and I'll be able to start working on Alpha 0.2. The first issue came when I realized she didn't have Unity. And of course she doesn't, why would she? She's also an animator. So I've downloaded Unity. I had to wait for all the install. Wait some more. Only to realize that I downloaded the wrong version, which, by the way, wasn't offered to me. I had to wait till they told me it was the wrong version. And then finally, after close to 20 minutes, we were in the game. Now, as you remember, we can move around and we can click on these boxes. And, that gives us a little bit of feedback. And then once we move left, it completes the heist, and if the timer were to run out, we would fail. Looking at my Trello board, I only had about 4 things that I wanted to complete for Alpha 0.2. First of which being to implement storage units, which, because I am an overachiever, I've kind of already done. So I've put that as yellow because there's a little bit more that I want to do. The second of which is to obtain money, add the money randomly generating, and to create an animation for the storage unit, that is being the door sliding up. So, of course, adding a value to a text object every time you click on an object is pretty easy, and very quickly I was able to make it so that $10 appear every time I click on a locker. So I'll consider money generation done. Now I want to make that random. Luckily, Unity has a random function of its own, and I was very easily able to implement that into the code. So now, whenever I click on the locker, a random amount between $1 and $10 is added. I found that every time I hit restart, it keeps the money. But I won't really be able to restart in the final game, so I'm going to leave that for now. So I consider random money generation done. So now the only thing left to do is to create the storage animation. Now, as you know, I'm a professional animator, and I could probably take 2 sprites and use some code with changing alpha to be able to implement this into the game very easily. A similar way that I would do for, say, After Effects. But I figured, why not make a sprite sheet? To be honest, I don't know which would be harder for the computer to process, but I ended up making 45 different sprites for a single door opening, and it took about an hour. So I brought that into Unity, and I cut them all out in the sprite editor, and now I had a door opening again and again and again. So I slowed that down a little bit, and I got an animation that I was happier with. but of course it just keeps going. I added a slightly new code and put that in an update function, so now whenever I press 1 on the number pad, the door opens, and it doesn't just constantly go from the very beginning. Because you know, we gotta unlock the lockers. I added that to every locker, and now that that was implemented, it was pretty easy to add a button to the locker, so now when I clicked on the individual one, the animation would play instead of everything going at once. After 2 seconds, the object now deletes itself, so it looks like the locker goes up and does not come down. The only issue is that as we click on the locker, as the object is still there, we can just keep clicking on it, and we kept getting money. I created a small image that I put behind every locker to give it some depth. And I created a trigger that then destroyed itself when clicked, which would prevent you from being able to click on the locker again and again and continually get money. So for the locker animation, I consider that done. And that kind of implements the locker entirely, so that's done as well. So that's Alpha 0.2 complete, pretty easily. But I didn't really want to stop there, because I've had some doubts about how my game will play. So I extended the background a little bit and put it together so it would now be seamless. Ignore the fact that the middle locker is a little shorter than the others. And that's pretty much the only other thing that I am. Okay, yeah, so I wanted to switch over to a playable character as opposed to pressing a button and going on to the next screen. I guess when I first started developing the game, I pictured more of a Wario minigame style, where it'd kind of be rapid fire minigames. And as I started to develop, I realized that that wasn't really going to work out, and it wasn't really the game that I wanted to make. So I created a playable character. Now, one of the problems I came across was with my new scene transition, that as I inch into it, I can create a glitch in which it pushes the camera off of the player by a full screen length or half a screen length and stays that way. So the code was created to push the camera a full screen length every time I walk through a trigger. The only issue with that is that as I inched into the trigger, it would sometimes push it the wrong direction or half a screen length. And then every time I entered this trigger from that point on, it would act correctly as well, but still be off from the player. As you can see now that the above screen does not follow the player. And I went to bed defeated because I just couldn't figure out why it was happening until I realized that I had 2 colliders on my player. And once I removed one of these colliders, the glitch no longer occurred. It's no secret that I like games in which you play as the quote-unquote bad guy. Payday 2 being the first case I brought up, but a game that I've loved since a kid was Sly Cooper. In fact, I still have my original Sly Cooper game. Now, one of the things that happens in Sly Cooper, at the very beginning of the level, the van pulls up and sort of tosses you out, and if you're doing a speedrun or something, it's a great way to start. But I've always liked that animation, and it's something that I kind of wanted to implement and pay homage to in my game. So first, I needed a van, and I created one in Photoshop, so I was able to get into the Unity timeline editor, which was pretty easy for me because it's not too different from a lot of Adobe timelines, like Adobe Premiere, Adobe After Effects, or Adobe Animate. So I was able to really hit the ground running with this with the help of looking up a few things. But I was able to spend a lot of time on here still because I was able to have a quality that I could expect and work at, while the code could be good enough to work. The animations I could really tweak to a point of being happy with. So I have the van pull back and the doors open. Simple enough. Now the only problem is that I want the van to come back, the doors to open, and the character to be thrown out. So for that I would need to animate the character as well. The only issue is that the van holds at that spot when the animation's done playing, so adding the player to the same timeline would freeze it. So I had to animate the character on a separate timeline and play it simultaneously behind the van. And it gives us the appearance of being thrown out the van. So now you can just walk through the van. So I created a floor that would prevent you from walking through the van, but also allow you to jump into it. Of course, if I jumped again, you'd be able to see my head. But the idea is that once the game is playing, it'd stop you once you entered the van. I need to fix the ground a little bit because you can get stuck, but as you can see, you can jump in and jump out of the van, no problem. So the final thing to do was to create a trigger to complete the level when you entered the van. This was pretty hard, and I got kind of confused with things like rigid bodies and colliders, but I was able to create one, and I added a activation node onto the timeline so that as the animation played, I wouldn't be activating the trigger, but then once I was already out of the van, it would activate and allow me to complete the level once I jumped in. So that is Alpha 0.2. What do you guys think about this one? I kind of like being able to work on a set amount of milestones and then add in a little extra, because that helps keep me interested in the project. Of course, I'm still interested in the project, but getting to add a little bit of polish to it really keeps me motivated to work on the next part. So what do you think about me doing stuff like that? Let me know down in the comments below. Let me know if you have a different name for the game, because I've also been second guessing the name a little bit. Shutter Heist. It works well enough when you know the game, but my only concern is that it doesn't work well enough if you don't know the game. So let me know what you think about that. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Follow the development of Shutter Heist, and I'll see you in the next one.